If you were on a game show and the topic came up, Bible, and you selected Bible from the Jeopardy category, and they said, name a character from 2 Kings chapter 5. If you're familiar with your Bible, familiar enough to know that 2 Kings 5 contains the story of Naaman, you would probably quickly hit your buzzer and say Naaman. But now if they reversed the question and said, tell me a character whose the location where the character by the name of Gehazi is found, very few would be able to say 2 Kings chapter 5. Because the account of Naaman has infiltrated our minds so much because of the great miracle that took place, we seldom would think about this man Gehazi. Let's set the stage for what we'll study for the next few moments as we look at 2 Kings 5 and examine the story of Naaman. You recall that, of course, if you're familiar with your Bible. Naaman had a miserable condition. Miserable condition was leprosy. Now, many see leprosy as a type of sin, and though there are some similarities, it's not truly a type. Leprosy was a disease. That doesn't hold anyone accountable to God, while sin does. Sin is not a disease, though we try to name it that in our current culture in so many ways. But sin is not a type of, leprosy is not a type of sin, but there are some similarities there. What leprosy did to the body, sin does to the soul. Leprosy was incurable, as sin is, without some outside interference, of course, from God in that regard. And so he had a miserable condition. The Bible says that he was a valiant man in war. He was a great soldier. He was a general, a captain in the host of the king of Syria's army. He was a man who was very highly respected. But then we have that three-letter word that transitions to something different. But he was a leper. Regardless of our station in life, regardless of how much is in your bank account, the car you drive, the house in which you live, you have a condition because it afflicts all accountable individuals, and that's sin. And maybe most of us, of course, have taken care of that, the blood of Christ, but we have that. And so it was with him, his miserable condition. But then we see this man had some mistaken conceptions. First, he wanted to offer the wrong price. You remember he took a good number of pieces of gold and of silver and of changes of raiment at the wrong price. Many people want to offer the wrong price for the ridding of their leprosy of the soul, if you will. And he also went to the wrong person. He went to King Joram, the fifth king of the divided nation of Israel. He went to King Joram, or Jehoram as he's called as well, and so he went to the wrong person. Many people want to do that. They go to modern day individuals. They go to someone like Joyce Meyer, or they go to Joel Osteen, or John Hagee, and on and on we could go with that list of individuals. And they put more confidence in a person than they do in the Lord. So this meant he went to the wrong person. But then he wanted the wrong procedure. He thought, and he said, behold, I thought, and he found out quickly, behold, I thought does not equal behold, I ought. And so he said, behold, I thought that surely this man will come out and he will wave his hand over the leper and he will have some magnificent scene because, you see, I'm such a valiant man. I'm a captain in the army, and I've come with this entourage. I've come with all of these great valuables, and he owes me that much. Went the wrong procedure. And the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 1 that God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the things which are wise. They haven't found that out. So the wrong procedure. Many people want the wrong procedure. They want to be saved by grace only or faith only, or they want to be saved by some still small voice in the night that speaks to them, or some development of the clouds in the sky, or some reading in the grains of the wood. Wrong procedure. Then also he wanted the wrong place. You see, he said, are not the rivers of Abana and far greater than this Jordan? And physically speaking, yes, they were. They were known for their beauty, and he was right about that. The Jordan was a muddy stream for the most part, and this Abana and Pharpar were far better, purer, cleaner. Most people want to go to the wrong place. They choose the church of their choice, just as Naaman wanted to choose the river of his choice. And so here was a man who had a miserable condition, a man who had some mistaken conceptions. Here's a man also who enjoyed a marvelous cleansing. But it was only after he did what the Lord said do. His servants didn't hold the same kind of attitude that Naaman held, and they said to him, if he had bid you do some great thing, wouldn't you have done it? Maybe in their minds casting him back to what he had said formerly. Hey, surely he'll come out and wave his hand over and make a great scene. And they were trying to get him to reflect back and say, you thought that's what he was going to do. If he had done that, would you have done what he said? But now he's asked you to do some simple thing. Why not do that? So the man went and did that. He dipped 7 times in the Jordan, as we know, and the marvelous cleansing that came upon him. Jesus referred to this man Naaman as the only one healed of leprosy in that day and time. I don't know about you, but as I consider this account, if I were a leper in that day and time, I couldn't have gotten to the Jordan quick enough. I'd have been dipping just as surely as he had, but it wouldn't have worked because he was the only one healed in that fashion. And so we see in this man a pattern of this miserable condition. Miserable condition of sin has encapsulated the world. The mistaken conceptions that he brought to the table, and so many do that. It was only when he did what the prophet said do, in the way he said do it, that it accomplished the task. He had some misconceptions, but then he experienced the marvelous cleansing. And then this man, Naaman, comes back to him with all of these gifts he had brought, and he said, accept something from me. And then Naaman refused to do so. That brings us to this man, Gehazi. The second portion of this chapter, the second part of the story, the lesson within the lesson, the sermon within the sermon, if you will. And it's on this part that we want to focus our attention for the next few moments that are available unto us. You see, this man is only mentioned here because of what he did. He's not integral to the story. There's nothing about Gehazi that contributed to the cleansing of Naaman. He might well, as we will notice in a moment, have been that messenger. We see in 2 Kings 5 and verse 10 that Elisha sent a messenger unto him saying, go and wash 7 times in the Jordan. Elisha probably was that messenger, and likely was the case. He's mentioned as the messenger of the prophet. But other than that, he played no part, and someone else could have done that. Elisha himself could have done it. He could have sent another messenger. But if indeed Elisha was this messenger, it's just only a sidebar to what was actually taking place. And so this man had nothing integral to do with that healing process. So we only read about him because of what he did on this occasion, because of the greed that he had. And let's notice some things about him. First of all, he heard something that gained his attention. He heard something that gained his attention. 2 Kings 5 and verse 5, the king of Syria, going back to Naaman's account, said, Go, I will send a letter unto the king of Israel, King Jehoram. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, 10 changes of raiment. Now, this man understood that. You see, this certainly was known to Gehazi. Later we'll find in verse 15, and he returned to the man of God, that is Naaman did after his cleansing. And he said, he and his company came, stood before him, and he said, Behold now, I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee take a blessing of thy servant. Gehazi was privy to this conversation. He understood that this man had brought great riches with him. If he didn't see it initially, obviously he was involved in the conversation, which is found out. He heard something that gained his attention. He also heard that this man refused to take it. Verse 16, Elisha, he said, As the Lord liveth, behold, before whom I stand, I will receive none. He urged him to take it, but he refused. This is going on in Gehazi's mind. Now, here's a man who's come with great wealth. Obviously, he can afford this. Elisha has done something for him that no other person could have done. He's relieved him of this deadly disease that would have taken his life otherwise. And he is so thankful and grateful, he's willing to give him this great treasure. But Elisha has refused to take that. His willingness to distribute that was evident to Gehazi, of course. That Naaman could afford that was evident. Here he had come all the way with these riches. And that he felt deep appreciation for what Naaman had done, of that there could be no doubt. He heard something that gained his attention. Sometimes that happens with us, right? We hear something that gains our attention. Our ears perk up, we say. Then second, he reasoned something that made no sense. He reasoned something that made no sense. 2 Kings 5 and verse 20. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, there's that word but again, that contrast, that sudden change. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master has spared Naaman this Syrian, in not recovering at his hands that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. He reasoned something that made no sense. Now, it makes no sense because we know the end of the story. It would make sense to us. We put ourselves in Gehazi's place, and maybe we've been guilty of that ourselves. Gehazi reasoned, well, Elisha had done a misdeed to Naaman. You see, Naaman came with his gifts, and Elisha refused them. Well, he's done a misdeed to Naaman. But he also reasoned that Elisha, in not taking those gifts, had perhaps offended this man. And so as he began to reason about this, it became easier to do so. It became easier to say, well, you know, I'm actually, what I'm thinking about is actually a favor to Elisha. And also a favor to Naaman. He has an outlet to express his gratitude. And I'm helping Elisha out because he may have offended this man. And so he begins to reason. And so we do that as well, don't we? You ever reasoned as a child? You know, you reason, well, I need this. I need this. I've got to find a way to let Santa Claus know I need this. We reason as adults, don't we? We reason, well, I need these new golf clubs, or I need this new dress, or I need this new car. But sadly, we also reason about things that are sinful sometimes, don't we? People reason, well, God wants me to be happy, and I'm not happy in my current marriage. We reason something that makes no sense. Oh, it makes sense to us in the moment. It makes sense to us when we think about it from that circumstance in which we find ourselves. Others reason, well, I know what God says about that, but it becomes easier to reason. Easier to reason further on down the line from that once we start ourselves on that path. It's some reason, well, I don't think God would begrudge me and sleeping over on my only day off, and so I'll just miss Bible class today. Or I'll just miss worship this morning. After all, I can go tonight. I don't think. You see, behold, I think does not the same thing that God has for us. Behold, I thought does not equal behold, I ought. Or we reason while everyone else is doing it. Reason something that made no sense. Elisha heard something or Gehazi heard something that gained his attention. He reasoned something that made no sense. But then notice again, he wanted something that he could not have. He wanted something he could not have. We read in the latter portion of verse 20, but as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. He should have followed the pattern of Elisha, this great prophet of God, this man of God, who was revealing in him the will of God in this particular instance. But no, he went off on a sidetrack. He went off on a tangent himself. Well, I'll go and take somewhat of him. He wanted something he could not have. You know, it's a lot like Achan. You recall the account in Joshua chapter 7? Joshua 6, the children of Israel had done something for the first taking of the first city in this promised land. God did it in an unusual way. They didn't battle in the normal way. God wanted them to know, this is my doing. I'm behind your efforts. I'm the one who's actually giving you deliverance. And so they had to march around that city once a day for 6 days, 7 times on the seventh day. The trumpets were blown and people shouted and the walls fell. And he said, this is the first fruits of the land, and so it belongs unto me. And you're to take no spoil from that. But remember the man Achan? Here's a man who, just like Gehazi, saw something that gained his attention. Here's a man who wanted something that ultimately he could not have. So we read about him here in Joshua 7 and verse 20. Achan answered Joshua and said, Indeed I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel. And thus have I done when I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonish garment. What was it that Naaman had brought with him? 10 changes of garment. So a goodly Babylonish garment, 200 shekels of silver. What did Gehazi brought with him? Silver in abundance. And a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight. What did Gehazi brought with him? Gold. Same kind of objects. You know, temptation comes in the same way. Love not the world, neither things that are in the world. If any man love the world, love the Father's not in him. For all that's in the world, lust the flesh, lust the eye, pride of life. Not of the Father, but of this world. Those 3 avenues, the same avenues to which Adam and Eve were tempted. Same avenue to which Jesus was tempted. Same avenues. We put new faces on it. We put new labels on it. But it's the same avenues today. Lust the flesh, lust the eye, pride of life. Same avenues to which this man was tempted. And so he wanted those things. And he said, then I coveted them and took them. And behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, the silver under it. You know, Paul said in Colossians 3 and verse 5 that covetousness is idolatry. We think about idols today, and we think about those things carved out of wood or chiseled in stone or molten out of some metal. We think of a Buddha in the corner of some Hindu merchant, or we think of in those terms, but an idol can be anything and is anything. It comes between us and God. Some years ago, Colin, our older son, who's also a gospel preacher, went on a campaign, and he said he heard a story while he was there of this man who had gone to the African bush, and he had gone into a man's hut, and he was amazed to see that all the chairs there were facing the idol. And he said, isn't that a shame? And he got home from his trip, opened the door to his house, and there in his living room, every chair was facing the television. Well, we have our own idols. This man coveted this, so it became an idol unto him. The same thing with Gehazi. He coveted those things. They became an idol to him. He wanted something he could not have. Now, he couldn't have it in the sense that it was forbidden for him. And he'll find that out later. Oh, he could have it. He was going to get it. He was going to obtain it for just a little while. But he really couldn't have it in the end. You know, we do the same thing, don't we? We want things that we can't have sometimes. And as I said before, do you realize the only reason Gehazi is mentioned by name in this section is because of this misdeed? How would it be? And there are others in the Bible, of course, that are mentioned simply because of what they did that was wrong. A lot of people are unnamed which did good things, but some are only mentioned because of the bad things that they did. Well, perhaps he was the one who delivered this message. He was the messenger there, of course. He coveted what was not his. He wanted that which he could not have. But then notice again, he told something that was not true. He told something that was not true. First, he lied to Naaman. Now notice, 2 Kings 5:21-23. So Gehazi followed after Naaman. And when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, is all well? And he said, all is well. My master sent me, saying, behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men, the sons of the prophets. And then he said, give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver, 2 changes of garments. Naaman said, be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him, bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of garments, laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bare them before him. You know, he lied to Naaman. Here he lied to Naaman, or he lied rather to Naaman, because Elisha had not sent him. Elisha had not sent him, yet he said, the prophet came and told me to come and catch up with you because 2 prophets have come. 2 prophets had not come. He lied about both of those things. Not only did he lie to Naaman, but he also lied to Elisha. Read in 2 Kings 5 and verse 25. Look at here's verse 25. But he went in and stood before his master. Elisha said unto him, whence comest thou, Gehazi? And he said, thy servant went no whither. What did he say to him? Well, what you been up to, Gehazi? Oh, nothing. Where have you been, Gehazi? Oh, nowhere. You know, you ever been caught like that and remember in your childhood days, your hand in the cookie jar, so to speak? What are you doing? Nothing. You ever have your wife catch you doing something? What are you doing in there? Nothing. Well, that's the same thing he said. Where have you been, Gehazi? I didn't go anywhere. And so he lied to him as well. Again, he was just like Achan in that regard. Joshua 7 in verse 21, of course, Achan had lied on this occasion. Anytime you have to hide that which you're doing, then the thing you get from it is ill-gotten. This man had to lie. He lied to Naaman. He lied to Elisha. If you have to lie to obtain that which you desire, and these were backwards, he said unto him, went not mine heart with thee? We're going to look at the subject tonight, Lord willing, of when men's blood ran cold. Probably mentioned this man as well. Can you imagine? Put yourself in Gehazi's shoes. He comes in back to the household of Elisha, and he has a skip in his step. He has money in his pocket now. It's hidden in his house, but he's got money. He'll gotten gain, but he's got it. The bank account just swelled, and he walked in, and all is well. He's done what he did, and no one's the wiser. Where you been, Gehazi? Oh, nowhere. Where you been doing? Nothing. Did not my heart go with you? He said. Didn't I see that man when he got down from his chariot to meet you? Imagine Gehazi at that point, devastated. Now what? His hand was red-handed. He was caught. Cookie jar imprints were there. He had done the deed he had done, and so now he was going to have to pay the price. Well, then notice again, we find he did something that was not right. You see, he heard something that gained his attention. He reasoned something that made no sense. He wanted something he could not have, told something that was not true, then he did something that was not right. Those follow in a progression many times, don't they? First, of course, he took the reward from Naaman, as we read from verse 23. He said, be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him. I imagine he didn't have to urge him too much. But maybe you put yourself in Gehazi's steps right here, and maybe Gehazi said, you know, if I took 2 talents, that's pretty heavy. You know, we're told various amounts about that. We're told a talent may be equal to 100 pounds. Think about that. Well, Gehazi might have been able to take 1 talent. 2 talents, that might have been a little bit of a drudgery for him. So maybe he had to urge him because Gehazi was thinking ahead and thinking, you know, that 200 pounds would be quite a load to take back. But he urged him, he took it anyway. And then Naaman put it on his own servants. He went beyond what he requested. He gave him another talent more, gave him those 2 changes of garments. And you know, those were expensive. It's not like he could go down to Walmart or Kohl's or someone take that off the rack. Those had to be made from scratch. And so those were expensive items within themselves. And so he took those 2 talents of silver. You know, I checked this morning, and on the exchange talent is $32.41 an ounce. Now, we don't know exactly what these amounts were, these weights, these shekels and so forth, but if it was $32.41 an ounce, and he had these 2 talents of silver, that's over $500,000. Silver. Gold this morning was $2,668.10 an ounce. Now, if this man had a piece of gold and he'd brought these with him, and 16,000 as he would have had, it would have been, it would have amounted to about $16 million in current money. But whatever it was, suffice to say, it was a great deal of money. And Gehazi, again, may be thinking within himself, and he might have just thought about the physical aspect of it. I couldn't carry all of it. But I can, you know, you can see him scheming as he goes and heads toward Naaman. He sees the clouds from the chariot and the dust rising. He thinks, you know, when I get there, what am I going to do? You ever done that? You made a decision, really didn't plan ahead, and so you kind of work it out as you go. Well, sometimes that's good and sometimes not. But he maybe was working this out as he went. You know, if I get there, I can't take all of that silver. I'm one man, and this is a load. And so I just ask for a talent. Now, I can throw the garments over my shoulder, and I'll be good. In fact, I'll pad that weight with those. You know, you can just see his wheels are turning. He's thinking about that. And then he gets there, and this man says, take 2 talents. Well, he urged him. And then when he saw he was going to send servants with him, maybe he thought, well, I should ask for more, you know. Maybe he'd have sent 4 servants back. We could have gotten this whole load here. You get greedy. That's what he did. Coveted. And so he did something that was not right. He took what was not his. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing. You know, that's a formula that'll work about every time. If you're in the wrong place and you're doing the wrong thing and you're with the wrong people, that's going to work. You know, we read in Scripture that evil communications corrupt good manners. I have 6 grandchildren now. The oldest just turned 14. Jeannie's getting older. But I pray for my grandchildren every day. One of the things I pray for them is that they will choose wisely their friends and companions at this stage in their life. Our younger 2 are 7. I pray that they will choose their companions wisely because I know from experience that the companions you make, the friends you make along the way will influence you in those formative years. Sometimes to a degree that you get into a cycle that you just don't get out of. I pray they'll choose wisely. I pray for their future mates. 7 years old, our youngest 2, and I'm praying for their marriage partners in life. And not only that, I'm praying for their future marriage partners' parents. that they're bringing them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Because I know how it can be with those who influence our lives. But contrary to that, they can also be good influence on others in those stages of their lives. And I pray that as well. Well, here was a man who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and doing the wrong thing. That's not going to end well, and it doesn't for us as well. Well, he took that which he should not have gotten. But second, he hid it to cover his deeds. Remember 2 Kings 5:24? When he came to the tower, he took them from their hand and bestowed them in the house. We don't know exactly what the tower was, but in most cities of that day, of any rapport, they had a wall around it. They had towers on them that they could post a guard. And so it's likely the case that Gehazi came to the city limits, so to speak. And he told the guys, the servants, well, I'll take it from here, fellas. I'll take it from here. Why? Well, Naaman might be able to, Elisha rather, might be able to see me from here. I'll take it from here. And so he's planned this out and gotten to this point and said, well, I'll take it from here. And so he goes to the tower, and he bestowed them in this house and let the men go, and they departed. And so he hid that which he had in his own house. He hid to cover his deeds. Now you think about this man Achan that we talked about earlier. What did he say? When I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonish garment, 200 shekels of silver, wedge of 50 shekels, gold of 50 shekels weight, I coveted them. I took them, and behold, they are hid in the earth, in the midst of my tent, the silver under it. Two guys who did the same thing. But they're not the only ones ever to have done that. They're not the only ones ever to reason in such fashion or to have been involved in such deeds. But they're two prominent ones that we think about this morning. We said earlier, anything you have to lie about is an ill-gotten gain. But anything you have to hide is ill-gotten as well. If you have to hide it from someone, likely there's some reason for that. If you have to lie about it, likely there's some fault with that as well. So he did something that was not right. And let's think about him again in the whole process here. He heard something that gained his attention. His ears perked up. His antenna went up, we would say. He heard something. Here's a man who's got great riches. Well, all well and good. This man has great riches. I could never be a part of those. And he's offered them to Elisha. But then he heard Elisha said, I don't want them. Elisha doesn't want them. Maybe he offended this man. This man, Naaman, has come with all those. He wants to express his gratitude. I might be able to get a part of those. Heard something that gained his attention. The wheels started turning. There's a song we sing. I don't recall the title of it right now, but it asks in the song for the Lord to forgive us when things enter our mind and we let them stay. Sometimes things will just pop into your mind. It might be from something you did in childhood or as a teenager. It might be something you saw in a movie you shouldn't have seen. It'll pop into your mind. But when we let it stay and we let it grow, then it becomes a problem. And so this came to his mind. He should have immediately thought, I can't do that. That's wrong for me to even think about such things. But he let it grow. He heard something, gained his attention. He reasoned something that made no sense. It should have made no sense to him that this man Naaman has the riches, this man Elisha has refused them, and now Naaman is returning home with his riches. But he thought, he's also returning home a healed man. He's a whole man. He's not a leper anymore. And he's grateful for that. Reason something made no sense. And it began because he heard something that gained his attention, and he let it stay. He let it grow. Then he wanted something he could not have. Oh, he could have it, and he was going to. Sometimes we get that determination in our minds, whatever it might be, we're going to have that. Men have gotten into great difficulties because of that. Not just riches, but other things as well. Someone else's wife, someone else's husband. No, we could go with that list. But then he told something that was not true. You see, these are leading right down the line. When you think about things you shouldn't think about, sometimes you reason in a way you shouldn't. Sometimes it leads you to wanting something you really can't have. And then it will lead you to telling things that are not true. Then he did something that was not right. That's going to be the ultimate end of it. If we let it grow, if we continue to feed that which we ought not in our mind, then eventually it's going to grow to that point. And then finally, notice, he received something he did not want. Received something he did not want. 2 Kings 5 and verse 27, after he had come back and Elisha had asked him, where'd you go, Gehazi? Oh, I didn't go anywhere. What have you been doing? I haven't done anything. Didn't I see you go after that chariot? Didn't I see this man Naaman step down from his chariot? You can know that the blood ran out of Gehazi's face quickly. He knew he was caught. And so in verse 27, the leprosy, here's the condemnation, here's the penalty. The leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. He went out from him, his presence as a leper, white as snow, received something he did not want. Consequences are going to follow our actions. Paul tells us that, Galatians 6 and verse 7, be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. He that soweth the flesh is going to reap corruption. He that soweth to the Spirit is going to reap spirit. We reap what we sow. In the laws of reaping, we reap according to what we sow. When we first moved to Tanzania, East Africa, in 1991, it's a tropical region. It's south of the equator, and so their seasons, what little there are there, that being that close to the equator, are different, the opposite from ours. So I told Jeannie when we were planning our trip, I said, I'm going to take some watermelon seed, and we're going to have watermelon Christmas. Never had that. So we're going to plant these watermelon seeds in that African soil, and we're going to have watermelons Christmas. We got there and made all our arrangements, got settled everything, planted those watermelon seeds, and they came up beans. No, they didn't. They didn't. They didn't. Even though they were planted in a different soil, even though they were in a different hemisphere on a different continent, 8 hours away from homeland, it still came up watermelon. Why? That's what I planted. But you always reap more than you sow, right? The farmer doesn't go out and plant a grain of corn and expect for that stalk to come up and give him one grain in return. You're going to get more. That's true in both realms. And on we could go with those thoughts. You've heard about them before, but we reap what we sow, and here's a man who's doing that. We read in Numbers 32 and verse 23. Here were Reuben and Gad, you recall. They were coming into the promised land, and Joshua was now going to be their leader eventually, but they approached Moses and they said, we really would like to stay on this side, what's called the Transjordan, this side of the Jordan, on the eastern side. We want to stay there because there's a lot of grass for our cattle and so forth. Half the tribe of Manasseh ended up joining them, but here Reuben and Gad made the petition. They said, we want to stay on this side. Well, Moses explained to them that if you do that, you're going to have to go over and fight with your brethren and then return. And so here's the thought. Moses said to them, but if you will not do so, if you won't go over and fight with them, behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. It's going to find you. It found Achan. Achan had hidden that under his tent, and he thought, all is well. Even perhaps when Moses began to select the tribe, after they had been told there's sin in the camp, and they lost some 30-plus Israelites in the little town of Ai. And Joshua had been told there's sin in the camp. Even when he began to select the tribe, and Achan standing there, and lo and behold, his tribe's chosen. And began to check, to examine the families, and lo and behold, his family's chosen. His general family, that big broad family with cousins and nephews and all that. And then it comes down to his household. Getting a little more nervous at this point. You're the man. And imagine the same thing with Gehazi here. Where you been, Gehazi? I haven't been anywhere. What are you doing, Gehazi? I'm not doing anything. You wonder if there was something in the eye of Elisha that Gehazi maybe saw before he heard what he said. Remember in Luke's account of Peter's denials? The Bible simply says that the Lord looked upon Peter. Peter remembered what the Lord had said. Before the cock crows, you'll deny me 3 times. The Lord looked on him. Can you imagine how Peter felt? But here, Gehazi is looking at Elisha. Well, I didn't do anything. I haven't been anywhere. I haven't done anything. Didn't I see you? Didn't my heart go with you? Here he's caught then. He's reaping what he sows. You see, one who engages in that which is not right will get something he does not want. We read about that in the judgment scene, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 10. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. Everyone might receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or whether it be bad. I don't know about you, but I've thought about the judgment. How will that be? I've tried to picture that. Is it going to be, and we picture things physically, right? Because that's the world in which we live. Is it going to be that Jesus is here, I'm standing here, and everyone else who's ever lived is going to see my record? You know, we would do it today in this fashion, you know. And I know I'm being facetious here in some ways, but will there be two big screens up? And before those here flashes the life of Eddie. He's going to tell us that in Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14. Let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole, the original says, of man. God shall bring every work into judgment, together with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Secret things. You know, if Achan had not been caught on that occasion, he would have been caught later on. Had Gehazi never heard those words from Elisha, didn't my heart go with you? He would have been caught later on. Had Achan never been stoned to death for his actions, judgment awaited him, punishment was there. Had Gehazi never been stricken with leprosy as a result of what he had done, judgment was still coming. But you see, far too often, individuals like Achan and Gehazi and Eddie have a tendency to put that off. We think if it's not judged in the moment, then maybe like us and maybe like others, it'll simply be forgotten. We can push it further down the line, where eventually we can push it maybe even out of the sight and memory of God, but not possible. Every secret thing. Gehazi reaped what he had sown. Gehazi had quickly come to the conclusion that what he had thought earlier that gained his attention, all that glitters is not gold. He quickly thought that when he reasoned as he did, now it made no sense. Easy to see on this side of the line. He quickly thought within himself, maybe wanting that which he could not have, he should have pushed that out of his mind and gone and done something useful. Maybe he thought also that when he told something that was not true, maybe that flashed in his mind. Looking at his leprosy. I lied to Naaman, I lied to Elisha. Ultimately, I lied to God. Maybe he thought when he did that which was not right, looked back on it with such regret. Too late now, the leprosy's on him. But you know, unlike Achan, whose judgment physically was final, and like Gehazi, who remained a leper the rest of his life, we have an opportunity to make it right. Look at your hands, there's no leprosy on them yet. Look around you, there's no stones flying at you. But make sure judgment is coming. The leprosy will be there, if you will. The stones are coming because every secret thing is going to be made known. That which you thought, which you should not have. That which you reasoned, which made no sense. That which you wanted, which you could not have. That which you told, which was not true. That which you did, which was not right, will ultimately bring upon you that which you do not want. We think about the life of this man and these men, Gehazi in particular, and we think, you know, he got his comeuppance. He got his just deserts. He got that which he deserved. You know, come Judgment Day, it'll be the same way with us. We'll be before a just God, a merciful God, yes, but a just God. Justice tempered with his mercy, and I pray for more of his mercy and grace every day, but still be a judgment. Still, those secret things are going to be brought to light, and we'll get that which we do not want. If we've thought that which we shouldn't think, reasoned that which we should not have done, told that which we ought not, done that which we shouldn't have, we'll get that which we do not want. Gehazi's story teaches us a great deal, just like Naaman's prior to that tells us a number of things. So many great gems in Scripture. Consider the life of Gehazi. Consider your own life. Maybe changes need to be made in your life. And if so, we would encourage you this very hour, this very day, this very week as we're engaged in this meeting, make those changes. Don't put those off, because just as Achan, maybe you're thinking they're hidden in my tent. Or just like Gehazi, they're there in my house. Nobody knows it but me. Secret things are coming. Judgment's going to be cast. The leprosy will be placed. Stones will be thrown. Matthew 25:31-46, the judgment scene there as Jesus sits upon the throne, and before him all nations. He shall sit as a shepherd and separate the sheep from the goats. Those on the left hand depart from me. Those on the right, come, you're blessed of my Father. They asked the same question, didn't they? When did we see you in these conditions and didn't do what you said, or did do what you said? When did we see you like this? When you saw these and the least of my brethren, and you didn't help them. Judgment is coming. These shall go away into everlasting punishment, the righteous into life eternal. Thank you.